We all know how Cyberpunk turned out. I'm not going to recap, and I even decided I'm not going to review it. I have it dropped for now because the more I played it, the more disappointing it got for me. But we're all missing the bigger picture. The corporatization of gaming is entirely to blame for this. The need to meet a certain quota and get this product out at this time is why Cyberpunk ended up how it did. Don't believe me? Well, first of all, let's end this idea that Cyberpunk was being developed for 8+ years, because it's simply not true. Now, I'm first going to say I understand why this idea started in the first place. Cyberpunk was initially announced at E3 2012 with the CG trailer that we're all familiar with, and began questions of when will this come out. This doesn't mean the game was actually being made. It means that they were planning on making it. As we know, Witcher 2 was released in 2011, so at that time, it could seem like Cyberpunk was the next game, right? Well, with hindsight, we know that this is wrong, because The Witcher 3 came out on May 19th, 2015. And if you haven't played The Witcher 3, you should, because the game is an honest 10 out of 10. Is it actually an incredible RPG experience? I love that game. But that being said, how the fuck were they going to develop Cyberpunk, the so-called next biggest RPG, alongside The Witcher 3, which is actually one of the biggest RPGs ever made? Doesn't make sense. And this doesn't mean that after The Witcher 3 launch that they were done, because they made 2 DLCs, Heart of Stone on October 3rd, 2015, and Blood and Wine on May 31st, 2016. So Cyberpunk development didn't actually begin until Blood and Wine was released in 2016. This is simply what makes the most sense, considering how high the production quality of The Witcher 3 and its DLC are. So let's figure this out real quick. May 31st, 2016 to December 10th, 2020 is 4 years.
Quick maths.
With all this context in mind, it makes perfect sense why the game came out the way it did. It had a 4-year development cycle, and it was extremely ambitious. If this game actually had an 8-year development, I promise you it would have looked way different. Now, you'll see that between Witcher 2 and 3 was also 4 years, so what gives? Well, honestly, I can't really speak on what happened with them. It's no doubt that there was a lot of incompetency behind it, but one thing I would say is all of the story foundation has already been laid, so honestly, it was probably very easy for them to figure that out, like how they wanted to take the story. So all they really had to focus on was building the world, which they also had lots of references for, and create the combat, which was basically just an upgrade of Witcher 2. With Cyberpunk, they're doing all of that from the ground up. I'm not excusing them though, so don't take it as such. I simply wanted to debunk the myth that this game was being made for 8 years. It wasn't. So now that we have the how, let's get into the why. Like I said before, the corporatization of gaming is the biggest fault here. The need to get products out at a certain time to pump up stock prices and pay out dividends. A big example I can give is Blizzard, because I love Blizzard games and know the company pretty well. Well, more accurate is Activision Blizzard, because they had a merge in 2007. Activision and Blizzard are not separate companies, they are one unit. Back in December of 2018, overnight, at no warning at all, Blizzard killed Heroes of the Storm Esports and significantly downsized the dev team, putting the game on maintenance mode, similar to how TF2 currently is. This means the game is going to get significantly less updates, and the main thing is really that the game will still be playable, and like they'll do new competitive seasons, but don't expect lots of new content at all. The only reason Blizzard would have to do this would be to save money, considering how HOTS is not a poppin' esports game, and also similar to how Activision cut the Destiny deal early. The ramifications of this was basically that a lot of people lost their jobs overnight. Besides players needing to figure out their careers, it's also the casters and even the production crew that helped make these events happen all lost their gig. Now, let's move on to Overwatch. In 2016, Overwatch shifted the paradigm of gaming, and now in 2021, it's somewhat considered dead. Why is that? I can tell you exactly why. It's because when they saw that Overwatch was mega poppin', they decided to hard focus an esports scene onto it instead of focusing on fun content. This simply killed Overwatch. No one actually playing the game was interested in their esports because Blizzard had to inflate their own viewer numbers to make it sound more popular than it actually was to shareholders. Later on, updates like the lore events that added PvE levels to the game, and the workshop, which lets you make game modes, and something I would love to see, a map editor, are things that Overwatch could have used way earlier in its life, like 2017. But since they allocated tons of dev time to pointless balancing, reworking, and esports, Overwatch is seen as a joke of a game, which is a shame. It's undeniable how fun the core gameplay actually is, but that doesn't mean much if you have outside influence taking away that fun. Let's move on to Diablo. I love Diablo, but at BlizzCon 2018, Blizzard dropped the ball in the most massive way possible. Diablo had the mythic stage for the first time in years, and they announced a mobile cash grab game to a crowd of PC gamers.
So we knew we want to use mobile devices as the platform for a new Diablo game.
I don't even need to explain this one. It was just so bad. It was a PR disaster. I don't know who thought this would be a good idea. But the point is that they made and announced this game to target the Chinese audience because China fucking loves Blizzard games too. And they also love mobile games. So it makes sense. Moving on to WoW, their golden goose, and definitely my favorite MMO and maybe even game. They have sacrificed their game design to keep people subbed for longer, removing things like a badge vendor and valor points for upgrading in favor of randomized stats and the Warforging Titan Forging, which is a random chance for your gear to upgrade up to 10 item levels. They were basically making the game more like Destiny to make it so it's more of a pain in the ass to get max eye level and eliminating BIS, best in slot. This is alongside the story being completely time gated, so you had no choice but to wait week after week for the story to progress instead of being able to just experience it all in one go. These past few years, they have reverted quite a few of these, and we are even getting Valor back. But in this expansion, they have a time-gated battle pass system in the Covenants, where you basically only get Covenant progress twice a week. It maxes out at 50, and we're currently at 34, so hopefully they don't just add more levels because that would suck ass. Just like it did in Legion when they kept adding levels to the artifact weapon. The WoW team is also incredibly behind schedule. They canceled BFA patch 8.3.5 to make more dev time for Shadowlands. Then they delayed Shadowlands, which was huge because it was the first delay since Burning Crusade, the first expansion. And now at BlizzCon, we had no footage of the new content to see because it wasn't ready. I have no doubt that COVID fucked things up tremendously, but it's undeniable that the pressure of keeping the WoW team on schedule caused them to fall further and further behind, and it could eventually hit a point where they need to delay again. Rather than giving the developers all the time they need to make an exceptional game, as Blizzard is extremely capable of, they instead are put on schedules and deadlines that are unrealistic, all to push out products and pay dividends to bump the stock. Shame, real shame. Even Hearthstone has had drama. Remember the Blitzchung situation? That was so awful. They really showed which player base they care more for in that. I'm optimistic for the future as always though, because Overwatch 2 looks amazing, Diablo 4 looks amazing, the D2 remaster looks amazing, and WoW even added back Valor, and tier sets are confirmed to return. But that's a subject for another day. So I just ripped Blizzard's asshole with all these examples because I know the studio the best, but I don't only play games from one studio. I have more. I love Battlefield. Now let's look back on the Battlefield 4 launch.
Thank you again.
We can be on the team if you want.
That's what I thought. What am I looking at?
Fucking terrible, because they felt a need to push out the game when it wasn't ready. I don't even need to mention the FIFA games. Those are literally paying for the same game every year with a roster change. And Star Wars Battlefront 2. Jesus Christ, that was bad. That was literally the peak of loot boxes. After that, they sharply declined, but holy hell, they really tied loot box randomness to the actual progression of the game and called it pride and accomplishment, as if a random reward actually means anything. It was fucking random. I had no influence over the outcome. Now, Jedi Fallen Order is a great example of what a big studio can do, so let's hope it keeps up. Bethesda. Honestly, we let them get away with a lot of bullshit. Every single game they came out with was a buggy mess. But the gameplay was always so good that we let it slide. You know why Skyrim blew up the way it did? It's because we never played anything like that before. And honestly, the gameplay hasn't aged that well, but for the time, it was amazing, and it also looked amazing. And that's how I feel about Cyberpunk as well. The actual moment-to-moment gameplay and the ability to make your build literally whatever you want is actually incredible. But there's more to a game than just the gameplay, especially in an RPG. I'm glad that we all ended up ripping Bethesda's asshole in the end, because let's go over their social crimes real quick. 1. Every game is a buggy as shit. 2. Every sequel in the series gets simpler and simpler. Going from New Vegas to 4, holy shit, the dialogue, bro, they eviscerated it. Elder Scrolls, from Oblivion to Skyrim, the major minor system, actually having to choose what you want your character to be. Oh my god. And it climaxed at Fallout 76, the most dookie cash grab ever. It just works. No, it didn't. It was shit. Bugs from Fallout 4 that players fixed in the unofficial patch resurfaced in 76 now that we can't mod it because it's a multiplayer game. Then, in the end, they add a battle royale to try and save it. Bro, that's besides the fact that they've been using the same engine since Morrowind. Bro, they are lazy as fuck. There was about to be another example, but I'm hopeful that it won't happen. Halo Infinite. That demo was honestly mediocre. As a Halo fan, I enjoyed it because I get to see what the new Halo looks like, but it's not just about me, it's also about getting non-Halo fans into the series, and they weren't crazy about it. Thankfully, Microsoft heeded 343's call, and the game was delayed by a whole year, which is great because the game simply didn't look ready. And I have faith that it's going to look way better by the next time they show it to us, because of all the good work they've done so far with MCC and even Halo Wars 2. 343's been killing it with Halo, but that's a topic for another day. The point I'm trying to get out is that delays are a great thing, but even greater is just giving devs the time they need. Doom Eternal. We were all pretty butthurt about the delay, but as my friend Lucas says best, they use black magic on this game because it runs so well, it's not even a joke. Shadowlands, despite having issues, definitely had a great launch, and the majority of what's there is great, and that's thanks to the delay. Half-Life Alyx is another example of a great game that could only be great because they had all the time they needed to get it right, which resulted in 160,000 sales in the first week. which is pretty good considering how truly niche VR is in its current state. The only way for games to get better going forward is to just give the developers their time. Frankly, not every game is going to be a Half-Life 3 or Alex where they spend 13 years arguing over how the game should be. The majority of the developers have a vision and want to execute it in a timely manner, but simply aren't given the time needed to do so. Games are freaking huge now, and they're only going to become massive. There's no way to make a massive game in 4 years, so we should start giving devs the time they need so they can execute on their vision. I promise you, the return on investment will be worth it because nothing great comes easy. If you watched to the end, thank you. I appreciate you for taking your time to listen.